Hello and welcome to My Texas 1942. Yes, 1942, because I'm here today with Katherine Smith, who came to Weatherford College in 1942. And Katherine, you were born in 1925, is that correct?
That is correct.
1925, so that makes you how old now?
97.
97 years old, wonderful. It's a privilege to meet you. And let me just say, I've had the most amazing pre-recording conversation with Katherine, and I'm so excited to be able to share some of the things that Katherine and I have been talking about. So Katherine, you were born in 1925 and your maiden name was?
Cavernous.
Catherine Cavernous.
Yes.
And you were born not in Weatherford, but
in
close
Mineral
by.
Wells.
In Mineral Wells. So in 1925, Mineral Wells probably looked a lot different to the way it does today.
In 1925, Mineral Wells was just a little country town, but by the time I was a teenager, thanks to the Baker Hotel, Mineral Wells was a swinging town with movie stars visiting.
Right.
That was until World War II happened.
So, Katherine, when you first came to Weatherford in 1942, there were a few cars on the road. Is that right?
A few, yes.
Just a few. Okay. And how do you find it now?
The traffic is almost as bad as Fort Worth and Dallas, Texas. Especially, if you hit the traffic, it takes now 30 minutes to get from my house to the south side of Weatherford, and that's 10, 12 blocks, I think.
That's a long time to go 12 blocks.
Yes.
It is, yes. So World War II, 1941 for the Americans, and it was 1942 that you came to Weatherford College. So in 1942, did you meet some of these young men who were going to become servicemen?
Yes. In fact, in 1942, there were servicemen at Fort Walters that were in the area, and they would come to Weatherford on weekends to get away from the base.
Yeah.
So there were servicemen everywhere when I was going to college.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have, or did you have, a special friend at Weatherford College that you were friendly with for a long time? No?
Not anyone. I have several friends, but my close friends at Weatherford College, I kept in touch with two. I did. I'm just now remembering. One, Helen Tidwell, and her friend Stella Ragsdale, I kept in touch with for many years. And in fact, I know that Helen is deceased. I don't know about the other one.
Right.
But she retired in Florida, and I was still communicating with her.
Thank you.
Till about 2 years ago.
Right. Now let's skip forward just very slightly. How did you meet your husband?
My husband's grandfather founded First National Bank in Weatherford, and after I graduated Weatherford College, I took a job as the secretary to the president at that time, who was my husband's uncle. And my husband came to visit his uncle, and we met, and he remained in Weatherford, and we moved away for 2 or 3 years and then moved back and have been here. I have been here ever since. Okay.
Now, you've also been a member of the church here in Weatherford for a long time. You were confirmed in the Episcopal Church here, is that correct?
I was confirmed in the Episcopal Church here in February of 1945.
Okay. That was an interesting era.
Yes, it was.
Okay. So the church at that time, was it very different from the way it is now?
Well, at that time it was the Episcopal Church, and now at this time it's the Anglican Church, but the service has changed very little, really.
Right. So you've been a worshipper at the same church for about 77 years. That must be a record.
I have no idea, but I know I'm the oldest person there now, so
Right.
there's no doubt of that.
Okay. So Catherine, it's been rumoured that certain members of the royal family in England came to Weatherford and worshipped at the church that you attended. So do you have recollections of royalty from England coming and worshipping at the church?
I'm sorry to say that I was told by someone whom is now deceased, but I believe very truly that that was an incorrect statement. I'm told that Douglas went to England to do all the paintings and that no English royalty ever came to Texas. And I think I can verify that that is true because I personally know that Douglas went to England to paint Queen Elizabeth, and he just began the portrait. And then I personally knew 3 people who were models for her body. So I think I can truly state that that is an incorrect statement.
Thank you for correcting that. That's important. Now, you moved to Weatherford in 1951 with your husband, and you moved into the very house that we're in now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what was the house the same then? And what was the street like then?
There were no houses west of this house on the street when we moved here, and the house was a wooden structure when we moved into it, and it is now a brick structure, and we added a large room on. There were a grove of live oak trees that we were very proud of. They're no longer here. Other than that, I don't know of any changes.
Okay, that's significant. Now, you live not far from Chandor Gardens, and I understand that you met Douglas Chandor. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I was in Weatherford to attend Weatherford College. At that time, the college was on South Main, where CVS Pharmacy is now, and the girls' dormitory was where Gibson's is now. One weekend, a friend of mine and I decided to walk up Lee Street and look at the gardens, and Douglas Chandor welcomed us and gave us a personal tour and allowed us to have pictures made with him.
That was lovely.
And he was a very gracious host.
Were you aware of his fame as an artist internationally at that time?
Yes, we knew that, and we were completely awestruck that he would take the time to show us his garden and spend time with us. He was a very gracious host. I think I've said that, but it's worth repeating.
Yes. And you also know some people that modelled for him as when he was an artist.
Yes, I had 3 friends. One is deceased, and 2 friends still who were models for various parts of Queen Elizabeth's body when he did her portrait. I know one was the shoulders and hands. I don't remember what parts the other 2 were modeling for.
Okay. And other than Douglas Chandor, you've also met many other famous people in Weatherford. Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say many, but I met Mary Martin, and there were some military generals that came through that I met at the time. And let me see.
Did you ever meet Larry Hagman?
Oh, yes, I forget that Larry's famous, or was. Certainly did. I knew Larry Hagman.
And what memories do you have of meeting Larry?
Larry would visit in my home, and he was always entertaining. He wanted to dance and entertain anytime he was with you.
Right. I can imagine that.
Yes,
I can
but
imagine that. Yeah.
he went to Weatherford High School and was a good student and was a very interesting person.
And am I right in saying that Larry actually had some hobbies that were in common with your husband? Is that correct?
Yes, they went hunting together, and I think maybe fishing, but I know they went hunting and they played poker.
And they play poker. Okay.
Yes.
Who was the better poker player?
That I don't know.
Right. Okay. And what about hobbies? What hobbies have you had over the years?
I enjoy gardening, and I enjoy painting and all kinds of handwork and handcrafts. I think if a craft came across that was to be done, I tried to do it. I still knit and crochet, and I grow orchids at the present time, which is sometimes a challenge to do in Texas.
Yeah, I imagine it would be a challenge in Texas. So how do you manage that?
You see to it they have humidity, and you pick the one that is easier to grow.
Okay.
Some I have don't ever bloom, and that's because they don't have the proper climate.
Right. Okay. Now, you've been active all your life doing something. Now, tell us a little bit about the Manor Storehouse, which is still going here. You've been involved a long time, is that correct?
Yes, I have been involved with it only 1 year after it was formed, so I've been involved with it since 1986. And the name was taken from the Bible for manna, and the purpose is to assist the needy people of Parker County. And we assist with food and clothing, household items, utilities, and prescriptions.
Right.
And it's an all-volunteer organization through all those years. No salary has ever been paid to anyone.
Right. But technically, you retired in 1992?
Correct.
Which is 30 years ago?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. So technically, you've been retired for 30 years. But you're still involved in Manor Storehouse there.
Yes.
And what else do you do? Are you hiding any other little secrets that you're still busy at?
Well, it's very important that I play bridge once or twice a week.
Okay.
I do that. That's what keeps my mind sharp, I tell myself.
And are you good?
But I enjoy the friendship of the ladies and the challenge of playing.
Right. And just on the Manor Storehouse still, you're still involved with that right now?
Yes.
Yes. And in what capacity?
I am secretary to the board of directors, and I'm also director of client managers. Client managers are the people who are in charge for the day, waiting on the people that come in for assistance.
Right. So you've lived in this city for a long time. You've lived in Texas all your life. So what would you say is the biggest improvement, or could I say the biggest change? What would you say is the biggest change that you've noticed in Weatherford, for instance?
The biggest change is that when I go in restaurants or stores, everyone are strangers. I'm accustomed to knowing everyone in the building, and that doesn't happen anymore.
That's a shame, but it's a bigger city now.
Yes, yes.
You've travelled a lot, I know. So tell us a little bit about your travels.
I have been to New Zealand, Australia, and Tasmania. I have done most of the Caribbean islands, been to every state in the U.S., including Alaska and Hawaii. I think that's everywhere I've been.
That's a lot of places. I mean, there's a lot of states, let alone
Yes.
the other countries. And tell me a little bit, I mean, what's your favourite country that you've been to, outside of the USA, of course?
What's what?
Your favourite country outside of the USA that you've
Oh.
travelled to?
I would say maybe New Zealand.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed the people in New Zealand. I found them very charming and very interesting.
And the scenery?
Oh yes, and the scenery.
Yeah.
And the similarity. There's an area there that's similar to the Yellowstone National Park.
Right.
And I found that very fascinating.
I bet you did, yeah. Yeah. Now, really important, you are 97 years old. Is there still something that you'd like to do while you're still living on this earth that you would like to do that you haven't done yet?
Well, I would like to go to Greece, but I don't think I'm going to do that.
Why not?
Because I don't think I want to go through the hassle of traveling on the airlines.
Okay, we'll blame the airlines for this then. You
Yes.
would if it was easier?
If it were easier, I would.
Any particular part of Greece that you'd like to travel to?
I'm just interested in all of it, I think. The historic part, yes, but I just found it fascinating from what I've read about it that I would like to see it.
Right. Okay, let's go back briefly to Chandor House
Okay.
and to Douglas. So you knew his wife as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Douglas' wife, Anna, and my mother-in-law were childhood friends. And I have tell a story that Anna Shandor hosted the first dinner party that my daughter went to. That happened that when my daughter was born, her grandmother came from South Carolina to visit her, and Anna invited everyone to dinner, and I was in the process, and the baby was like maybe not 2 weeks, 3 weeks old, and I was in the process of leaving her at home when I was given to understand that if I wanted to come to dinner, the baby was coming also. So that was her first dinner party.
And the Pythian home, you've got some history with that as well?
Simply visiting it, and when I first came, I was fascinated to find the young men in Weatherford College that lived at the Pythian home, and learned that what their livelihood was like, and thought it was so interesting that they lived there and farmed and prepared their own food, or not that they prepared it, but they helped grow it, helped produce it, and that they milked the cows and had a life of that type, and also went to local school and local college.
Wonderful. I'm also popping back again here. So when Fort Waters started to be occupied, how did that change Mineral Wells?
It changed Mineral Wells very greatly. I think one big reason was because so many families moved there, and Mineral Wells being a small town, there was no place for the families to live, and people took people in. We took someone in my parents' home, and that was commonly done, and from that time on, Mineral Wells was a different town to the party town it had been before.
And your memories of the Baker Hotel, how do you remember the Baker Hotel?
We had our high school prom on the roof of the Baker Hotel, And I was in the hotel from time to time for various events. But there again, and I visited later when there was the Brasses Club was in the basement, and it was a social area again at that time, but not like it was when I was a child or young person.
No. Okay. Now, sadly, your husband passed when he was quite young. That was in 1976. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. And tell me about that, if you don't mind. That was quite sad.
About
Tell me about that, if you don't mind, because it's quite sad that he was so young.
Oh yes, he was a juvenile diabetic type 1, and he at that time, when he was young, there wasn't a lot known about how to care for diabetics really, and he had lost his left limb from below the knee, and had vision problems, all the problems that diabetics I think still have actually, but definitely he had a challenged life due to the diabetic situation.
Right. Well, you've kept yourself very busy since then, obviously.
Yes,
And
I seem to have.
you certainly have, and it's been such a pleasure meeting you, Katherine. It really has, and I just thank you for spending the time with us. And if there's anything that you would pass on as a life lesson that you'd like to pass on to other people, what would that be?
I would just say live life and enjoy it, and spend time with friends and family when you can.
That's a great place to leave. Thank you, Katherine, so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.